The beginning. Stumbling in the half-light. Here is a collection of stories from my rapidly deteriorating memory. They are roughly in chronological order, but some stories may jump forward or backward in time, and some have no time at all. I've always been a storyteller, but when my daughter asked me to write them down for future generations, I was averse to do so. More than half the fun of the story is in the telling, and I was not sure I could capture that fun in writing. Be that as it may, here they are in written form. Keep this book by the bedside, and let me tell you some bedtime stories. We'll start with some very early family history. Enjoy. Chapter 1, Wilderness Prophet. When I was a young child, my grandfather Anderson used to tell me stories of the people, and that I should be proud to be a Mohawk of the Turtle Clan, and how the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse, came to be. Back in the dark days before the League of Peace, the Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, and Seneca tribes lived in the land of the Finger Lakes in what is today upstate New York. While they tried to share the land and its resources, more often than not, these interactions led to competition and conflict. Over time, these conflicts became more savage and nearly continuous. There was no peace or security, and all the people lived in constant fear of raiding parties. Many villages whose food supplies were stolen or destroyed would starve to death during the long winters. These wars of attrition made the tribes small and powerless. The surrounding tribes would prey upon them and push them out of the good hunting grounds. Soon the cry of the people reached up and touched the heart of the Great Spirit. He sent a messenger to a young girl across the Great Water in Huron territory, near Tyendinaga Reserve today, to tell her that she would give birth to a special child formed by the Creator to bring peace to the peoples far to the south. She was to call the child Tigandawida. My grandfather always called him the peacemaker, though, as his name is so holy, it should not be used in general conversation. However, the girl had a premonition that her child would bring great evil upon her own people and in the future, and so she tried 3 times to drown him. But each time the child bobbed to the surface unharmed. Eventually, she accepted her responsibility, and her son grew up to be strong, handsome, and spiritually powerful. And her son was perfect in every way, except for a speech impediment. When the time was right, the Creator revealed to the peacemaker his great commission to go to the warring tribes across the Great Water and bring the law of love and peace. At first, the peacemaker was reluctant to take on this role and complained that his speech impediment would just make him a laughingstock. The Creator reassured him that through the power of the Holy Spirit, all things were possible, and that he would raise up a mouthpiece who would speak on his behalf, and to not be afraid of anything, as he was always with him. The Creator then raised up out of the lake a fine stone canoe that the peacemaker could use to travel to the tribes to the south. When the peacemaker reached the southern shore, he happened to land in Mohawk territory. The chief of this area was the much feared, fierce warrior who ate the hearts of his enemies to capture their strength and courage. His name was Hiawatha, and he was amazed to see the peacemaker and his stone canoe and his fearlessness, and invited him to his camp to find out why this stranger had come to his territory. The peacemaker told Hiawatha that the Great Spirit had sent him because he had heard the cry of the people, and that it was his desire to see peace and trust restored among the tribes. Has your constant warfare made you stronger? No, it has only made you weak and fearful, the peacemaker explained. The law of the Creator is love and peace. This is the source of true strength and prosperity. He wants to see all the tribes living together under one league of peace. Hiawatha was much impressed by the peacemaker and his powerful message, and indicated that he could get the Mohawks to agree to work towards peace. Hiawatha even agreed to go with him to the other tribes and speak on his behalf. The peacemaker and Hiawatha traveled to the other tribes and tried to convince them to come together under the Creator's great law of peace. Because of the generations of conflict, many said it was a good idea, but they didn't trust the other tribes to uphold the law. However, the peacemaker was able to show them signs and miracles to convince them of the truth of the Creator's words, and many agreed to give it a try. All the time they traveled together, the peacemaker taught Hiawatha to memorize the great law of peace and how the structure of the league was to be organized. The last holdout was Tadadaho, the hate-filled chief of the Onondaga, who was a powerful shaman and put a curse on the peacemaker and Hiawatha. Tadadaho lived alone in a cave and let hate and desire for vengeance so fester in his heart that his physical appearance changed to that of a distorted monster. When Hiawatha returned home, he found that all three of his daughters had died under mysterious circumstances, and he was convinced it was Tadadaho's curse that had caused this. He became despondent and felt that all their efforts were in vain. It seemed all was lost. But eventually, the peacemaker rekindled Hiawatha's faith in the Creator's plan and helped him to forgive Tadadaho's evil curse. Together, they traveled back to Tadadaho's cave and talked calming words and sang sacred songs to him for days. Eventually, Tadadaho's countenance began to change. The evil spirits of hate and vengeance left him, and his face became radiant with smiles. So changed was Tadadaho that he became the most ardent supporter of the peacemaker and Hiawatha, and was eventually named Grand Chief of the League and hereditary keeper of the council fire. With all the tribes willing to try, the peacemaker convened a council fire and brought all the chiefs together. He said that the three main principles of the great law of peace were that through consensus, the people should agree on the hunting grounds allocated to each tribe. They should reduce their weapons to those required for hunting only. And if any one tribe would rise up against another, all the other tribes would interfere to stop the aggressor. He then pulled up a young white pine tree, and below the root ball, a hollow area containing a small stream opened up. And he asked the war chiefs to throw their war clubs and hatchets down the hole. After this, he replaced the tree and said that as they applied the Creator's great law of peace and prosperity, this pine would grow high and their peace would spread out from this point in the 4 directions. Eventually, an eagle would build a nest on the top of the tree as a symbol of the all-protecting eye of the Creator over them. He then tied 5 arrows together in a bundle and asked each of the chiefs to pass it around and try to break it. The bundle went around the circle, but none of the chiefs were able to break it. This, he said, was symbolic of the League. As long as the chiefs held fast to the great law, they would be unbreakable, like the bundle. Then he cut the bundle apart and easily broke one of the arrows. If you turn aside from the great law, you will each become like this one arrow and be easily broken. He added, I tell you this, there will come a time in the future when your descendants will turn their back on the great law of peace. This will bring a time of great trouble. Your people will be broken. You will become strangers in your own land, and the trees will begin to die from the top down as a sign. When this time comes, he continued, I will return and reestablish the peace. This time, not just among the 5, but among all the nations. After the council fire, he left the chiefs in the hands of Hiawatha and Tadadaho, got into his stone canoe, and paddled off to the west, never to be seen again. The nations remained united, and the organization of the League brought peace and prosperity. Years later, when I heard that Baha'u'llah had come from God to establish peace among all the nations, I remembered this story of the peacemaker and how he had told them that he would return. When I read Baha'u'llah's writings about the lesser peace, I was really amazed. He said the 3 main principles of the lesser peace were that the nation should, through consensus, fix their boundaries with one another. They should reduce their armaments to those required for internal security. And if any one nation were to rise up against another, then all the nations should rise up and subdue the aggressor. I realized then that Baha'u'llah fulfilled within himself the prophecy of the peacemaker, that he would return and reestablish the law of peace among all the nations of the world.